Three big arguments on side proposition. One, publishers aren't passive conduits. They're actively making editorial choices, and those choices carry moral weight. So distributing deeply offensive material is an active choice to perpetuate that. Second, some literature does cause real demonstrable harm. Content that dehumanizes groups, incites hatred, normalizes violence. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It causes real world changes to happen. Third, moral obligation does not necessarily mean legal prohibition, meaning Prop is not asking the state to ban anything. We're just asking publishers to exercise the moral judgment that they already operate with. Three big opposition arguments. One, the free flow of ideas, including offensive ones, is important for intellectual progress. Censorship of any kind creates a precedent that threatens free expression as a whole. Second, who defines deeply offensive? Who defines what that is? It's very unanswerable. Any standard is subjective, and any standard can be weaponized against minority groups. Third, publishers are platforms, not moral arbiters. That means their obligation is to the market of ideas rather than what those ideas necessarily are. There's a version of this debate that side opposition wants you to have. It is a debate about censorship, about who controls ideas, about the slippery slope from refusing one book to burning them all. And I understand why they want that debate, because it is a debate they can win. That is not this debate. Side proposition has never asked the state to ban anything. We never asked for legal prohibition or government oversight or any mechanism of enforcement. We asked whether publishers, private actors making active editorial decisions every single day have a moral obligation to consider the impact of what they choose to amplify. That is a completely different question, and side opposition spends this entire debate answering the wrong question. Two big pieces of clash. First, are publishers passive or active? That is the clash that determines everything else. Side opposition's entire case rests on the characterization of publishers as neutral platforms, pipes through which ideas flow without any moral implication. If that characterization is true, their case works. If it is false, their case collapses. Hint, it is false. And side opposition knows it is false because publishers reject manuscripts every single day. They make judgments about quality, about market viability, about reputational risk, about what their imprint stands for. Every major publishing house has an editorial philosophy. They are not the post office. They don't distribute everything submitted for them. They choose. The moment you accept that publishers choose, and you have to because it's a fact, it's true, the question is not whether they exercise judgment, but what principles they should use to exercise that judgment. Side opposition does not give you an answer to that question. They simply assert that that judgment should never include moral consideration of harm. That is not a defense of free expression. That is an abdication of moral responsibility dressed up as principle. Here's what logical precedence matters. Side opposition's arguments about the dangers of defining offensive content only work if publishers do not have an incentive or obligation to try. We are not asking them for a perfect definition. We are asking for a genuine attempt at moral reasoning. That difficulty of drawing a line is not an argument against drawing one. It is an argument against drawing it carefully. The second biggest clash is, does deeply offensive literature cause real harm? Side opposition tells you that answer is uncertain. I want to weigh that uncertainty carefully because I think it is very important to get this right. Weigh the certainty of what we know against the uncertainty of what they claim. What we know, documented, empirical, historical, is that literature dehumanizing Jewish people preceded and accompanied the Holocaust, that content portraying Black Americans as subhuman was foundational to the ideology of lynching, that the Rwandan genocide was preceded by radio broadcasts and printed material explicitly describing the Tutsi people as cockroaches. These are not speculative links, they are historical facts. The idea that deeply offensive content exists in a vacuum with no connection to the world is not a defensible position. Side opposition's uncertainty argument only has force if the potential harm is small. It is not small. If side proposition is wrong, and publishers refuse material that was actually harmless, a book goes unpublished, an idea finds another outlet. If side opposition is wrong, and publishers distribute genuinely dehumanizing content, real people are hurt, real communities are targeted, you need to weigh the magnitude of the best case and worst case coming from side proposition and side opposition. The cost of our mistake is inconvenience. The cost of their mistake is harm to the most vulnerable. That asymmetry is not even close. Side opposition gave you a principle that free expression, without engaging with the responsibility of it, is what that principle requires. Side proposition wins this debate because we took that question seriously. We are asking publishers to be what they already claim to be: thoughtful, responsible, morally serious participants in the culture they helped to create. We are so proud to propose.